I'm Rosa Mendez, and I'm here at the #1 Long Island broadcast, Monty and Pharaoh. I had the best time ever!
Hey, listen, Daddy, you're listening to the #1 broadcast, Monty and Pharaoh, Daddy, in Long Island. The best pro wrestling broadcast of all time, I think.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, man, it feels good to be back on YouTube. It was quite disappointing what happened to us, but we bounced back fairly quickly.
Well, what else would we do? We're almost at 5,000 subscribers.
Well, speaking of that, man, we need more members.
Okay.
What do you think we need to do to get the people of those 5,000 subscribers to come on and join the team as a Monty and the Pharaoh member?
Nudity is out of the question. Any other ideas?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But what I do have a few ideas.
Well, just like Prel, they should tell 2 friends, and they could tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out all our content.
But that's, you know what? That's why you're the star of the show, because guess what? Members get special content. Even we spoke about it. Pharaoh came to me one day and he goes, man, what's the deal? I can't even watch some of these videos because I'm not a member. And I said, there you go, Pharaoh. You got to be a member because this is what the members get. They get free content
Nice.
that none of the other fans that watch this show get.
That's right.
You get free autographs from some of these wonderful stars that come in, right?
Nice.
All you do is you go to the MNP webpage, or right, our own page, and shoot us an email and say, hey, man, I want a picture of Tommy Rich. I want a picture of whatever. And boy, that's on its way.
We give them their choice.
That's right.
We rock.
We do rock.
And you need to rock too. Join.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the second edition of This Week in Pro Wrestling History with me, Bruce, and I've got the player over here, Benny Scala. What's going on, Benny?
Hey, Bruce. Well, I got to tell you, it's been a rough couple of days lately.
Hey, why? What's going on?
Well, I went to go see my psychologist.
How'd that go?
Well, she told me that I suffer from delusions of sexual superiority. She just wants to fuck me. I told her to get in line.
You are the player, so why not? Yeah, get in line.
That's right. Players got to play.
So, last week we had a fun time going through.
Yeah, it was great.
Through history. And then what happened on Thursday?
On Thursday.
Thursday, we were on a show together, and somebody lost their title.
Oh, that show. I'm in denial, I guess. Yeah, it was close. I lost by 2 points. I think I got screwed on a couple of my takes, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm bashing Edge for a minute and a half straight, and I didn't even finish, and I only got 2 points on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I looked. I'm doing the take. And I remember what my score was before I started. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is at least a 12-pointer, and I'm going to be at this number. And I only got 5 points. It's like, what the? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, well,
exactly.
What? It gives us more motivation to do better next time.
Absolutely. That was a lot of fun. Actually, it seemed like last week, first week was great. Last week was even better.
Yeah, it'll get better and better, I'm sure.
So what we're talking about is on Thursdays at 8 p.m., Benny and I are on another show on the network called This Week in Pro Wrestling, where Mike Monty gives us a topic and we basically go off on it. And we get points based on our creativity and our knowledge of pro wrestling. So you got to check that out. So, Benny, how did the interview last week go on Dan and Benny?
Fantastic. And we got another very good one this week. We're really looking forward to it. It's going to just be really exciting. And tune in is all I can say. I don't know if I should give a spoiler or not who it is.
No, it's up to you. That's up to you. This is coming out. Don't forget, this is going to be coming out Wednesday morning.
Right. Actually, why don't I say who it is? It's going to be Harvey Whippleman, a.k.a. Downtown Bruno Lauer.
Awesome. Yeah, that should be
It should
great.
be a very fun and very exciting interview.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know how much history he has in pro wrestling. So
he does. I mean, people think that, they remember that short stint when he was in the WWF and he was a referee, but he's actually been in the wrestling business, believe it or not, since 1979 when he was 14 years old.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of stories, and I can't wait.
Yeah, very interesting stories.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch. So yeah, you want to get this you get This Week in Wrestling History going?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we're going to start off on October 9th, 1982 in Chicago, Illinois. Why don't you take it?
Yeah, on that date, October 9th, 1982, Chicago, Illinois, Nick Bockwinkel defeated Otto Wanz to regain his AWA World Heavyweight Championship. And it was, he actually had, Wanz had defeated Bockwinkel on August 29th, losing it 41 days later. And rumor has it, I mean, it's actually reliable, good sources, that he actually paid Vern Gagne $50,000 for his title run. So, and Wanz was a legend in Germany, and believe it or not, was one of the few men to body slam Andre. And one of the dear guests from Monty and the Pharaoh, Mike Halleck, trained or was a prominent figure in Wanz's CWA, Catch Wrestling Association.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of research. I haven't gotten to watch a lot of it, but that whole round thing seems pretty interesting, where they literally they have rounds like boxing rounds, and they kind of mess with each other in between them. So it's pretty cool. Wanz is well known for that, and yeah, it was that's pretty cool.
Definitely was not well known for his AWA title run. It was very lackluster, and like I said, he just I guess Vern needed some cash, so maybe. I wish I had 50 grand back then. Maybe he would have made me champion for 41 days.
Yeah, right. You could buy the title.
So, I don't think we can do that anymore.
No.
I mean, if we gave Vince McMahon or Triple H $1 million, maybe he'd give it. We do like that thing with like Nicholas, the school kid,
but
with Braun Strowman.
I think with AEW, if you gave them enough money, they would just create another title for you because they have enough of them.
They do. But what's one more, right?
So, hey, let's move on. What about 1969 in El Paso, Texas?
Yeah, Eddie Guerrero, Latino Heat, was born. And what can you say about him? I mean, not only Eddie, but the whole family. I mean, it was a great wrestling family. And I mean, Eddie, in the short amount of time, because he had a rather lengthy career. I mean, there was so much left to it, but he did it all. And he was phenomenal if he was a babyface or heel. And his in-ring work was absolutely flawless. His charisma was off the charts. And we talked last week, I guess, about Brian Pillman being found dead in his hotel room in Minneapolis. Same thing. I think it was 2005, I want to say.
Yeah, 2005.
And I believe so. And, although Eddie did it all, he left in the prime of his career. And I think he still had his best years ahead of him. And there were so many more greats. I mean, the feuds that he could have had over those next, say, maybe even 5-7 years, mind-boggling.
I mean, yeah,
he was so the top of his game.
He was so young, and and I think about it because I watching him in doing the cruiser stuff in WCW, and just watching his career. He had a lengthy career, but at the same time, it seemed like he had so much left on the table that he could do.
Yeah, he was getting better and better. I loved his. When he would take a chair and he would bang it on the mat, and then he would throw it when the referee's back was turned, he'd throw it to his opponent, and then he'd just just flop on the mat. Referee would see him on the mat with the opponent with the chair. They got a DQ win.
Yeah, that was
classic.
Absolutely. So let's go on. So on the same date in 2006 in Orlando, Florida, Kurt Angle made his debut for TNA. Well, what can you say about this? This is really TNA's second biggest signing. At that point, they had already brought Christian Cage over, but I mean, this really legitimized TNA as a competitor to WWE. At the time, they had already switched over. But yeah, I mean, what an impact player. WWE did not want to bring Kurt back, and they were really discouraging him because of the neck issues. But the TNA was willing to take a chance on him, and let's face it, he had a great run there.
Yeah, and whenever I think of Kurt Angle, I always think of that when he had that little cowboy hat on.
Always.
If I ever you have those go-to things that if you need a good laugh, you could think of something in a crack ship every time. That's one of mine. That was just priceless. I never thought that. I mean, Kurt Angle, his reputation as an Olympic wrestler and as an athlete was, without parallel. But who would have thought that he would become the personality that he became?
I mean,
unbelievable.
He had it all. I mean, that was one of the wrestlers that probably should have also gone over into acting that didn't. I mean, he the charisma, he could play both sides. He could be that angry heel, but then he was like the comedy, the jester on the side. So
and he was one of those guys. I mean, I wouldn't ever want to mess with Brock Lesnar ever. But I mean, right behind him would be somebody like a Kurt Angle. I mean, I can only imagine how legit tough that guy was and probably still is.
And APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB. That's right, folks. Canine Corral. For all your dog daycare and overnight care, call 631-549-1544. That's 631-549-1544.
okay, so let's move on to the 10th in Bay St. Louis, Missouri. What happened there, and where the hell is that?
What
place?
is Bay St. Louis famous for? It's famous for shitty pay-per-views. I guess now it is. So this was the location of the Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view. Like I said, arguably the worst ever. It was supposed to be the first in a series of pay-per-views. It was actually going to be like a semi-nostalgia act. It was supposed to feature stars of the 80s, maybe in the early 90s. And those plans were unfortunately scrapped after a low buy rate and an intoxicated Jake Roberts simulating sex acts with his snake. And just to clarify, the snake that he brought into the ring in a bag. Well, I guess to further clarify, not the one-eyed snake. And although the event was heavily promoted, the total number of buys was 29,000, falling just a little bit short of the 40,000 views needed to perpetuate the series. The Wrestling Observer actually cited this as the worst major wrestling event of the year, probably of all time. And Dave Meltzer gave the match between Butch Miller and Luke Williams. They could not call them the Bushwhackers, I guess, because of copyright infringements against the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. He gave that a -5 stars. They did invite many other, star wrestlers, but most of them declined. And Gordon Solie was supposed to be the commentator. And in my mind, Gordon Solie and Lance Russell, they're 1 and 1A. But he fell ill, unfortunately, and more unfortunately, a few months later died of throat cancer. And as great as Mr. Solie was, I don't think he could have saved us.
No, I agree. I have to agree. I think he dodged a little bit of a bullet there with not having his name associated with his pay-per-view.
Yeah. I don't think that was something he wanted to add to his legacy.
So here's a question I just popped into my head as we were going through that. So I understand they couldn't be the Bushwhackers, but why couldn't they have been the Sheepherders? Yeah,
I guess they could have been. I think they called them just Butch and Luke. But I can't imagine there would have been any kind of trademark on or copyright on the sheep or the Kiwi Sheepherders or the Sheepherders, whatever they were before. Man, I remember the first time I saw them. It was the Southwest Championship Wrestling, out of San Antonio, and those guys were brutal. I mean, Jonathan Miller, I guess, and Jonathan Boyd, I think it was his name, and Butch Miller. And man, oh man, I mean, every time they got in the ring was a bloodbath. And then they come to the WWF, they're the Bushwhackers, and it's a comedy act.
Yeah, I have to say my exposure, probably 8 or 9. I got to watch them. I was down in Florida visiting my grandparents, and my grandfather was a big wrestling fan. And man, they were just so violent. I don't know if that was like UWF or NWA. Maybe Georgia. I don't really remember. It was such a long time ago, but I just remember them being so like violent. And then they came to the WWE or WWF and were that fun-loving duo that got a second life as a comedy act.
I have a quick Bushwhacker story, actually. I think it was around 93 or 9, but around 92, 93. And I was living in Kansas City at the time. And my mom was still around, and she, I came down here to Florida to see her, and I'm at the Tampa airport because I always need my liquid courage before I get on any plane. I don't care what time of the day it is, morning, noon, or night. And I see these two familiar guys at the bar, and it was them. It was Butch Miller and Luke Williams. And I said, I'm a huge fan. started having a drink or two with them. And as fate would have it, they were right behind me on the plane. And we continued our socializing and as well as drinking. And I made the remark that I watched wrestling, which is a true story. And it's actually this week in wrestling, October the 11th, which is the next date we're going to cover, October 11th, 1980, that I watched wrestling on my wedding night. And the flight attendant happened to walk by just as I said that. She's, "Oh, wow, aren't you romantic?" And she gave me crap the rest of the flight, and I guess rightly so. But great guys, though. They're really, really nice guys.
Nice. So let's move on to October 11th, and we'll go back in time to 1977 in Memphis, Tennessee.
I have the feeling, so this is only the second episode, I have the feeling that there's probably not going to be a week that goes by that we don't cover at least, 2, maybe even more events, because it's just so prevalent in the history of wrestling, things that happen in Memphis. But on this particular date, October 10th, 1977, Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler defeated Doug Summers, who was substituting for Bar Zukov, and Soldat Ustinov, hopefully I'm saying that right, to win the AWA Tag Team Championship. And now when I hear whenever I think of Memphis wrestling, there's 3 names that come to mind: Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, and Lance Russell. They were the epicenter of what is, to me, the best territory in the history of wrestling. To think that Memphis is a small market location. I did a little bit of research. It's only 48th in the TV market in the United States. So it's not really, not a big city by any means, but how they could routinely sell out the Mid-South Coliseum week after week. I mean, for years, and we're talking years, 20 years, is a testament to the greatness of these guys. And, as well as Jerry Jarrett, who was the promoter. Bill Dundee on his best day was 5'7", but he was able to make those fans, and they were very hardcore fans, believe that he was legit.
He was a little tough little SOB, I'll tell you that.
He sure was.
And 5'7", that's what he was billed at. You know what that means.
Yeah, he's probably 5'4". Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while we're on the subject of people about 5'7", on October 11th in 1988, Trevor Dean Mann, known to the wrestling world as Ricochet, was born. Well, I have to say, I would have when I was a kid, Ricochet would have never made it to the WWE or F at that time, and he would have never had the mainstream exposure that he's gotten. But man, if you go back and look at what this guy has done in wrestling, he has done it all. You name the promotion, he's been there and he's done it. He from over in Japan, down in Mexico, he from the lucha stuff. Guy has been everywhere. I'm amazed he made it to the WWF or E at his size. I mean, he's only 5'7", 5'8", and 180, 190 pounds. But man, he has made an impact there.
I think of the territory days, and I call it the Bruiser Brody test. So if I want to, in my own mind, judge the legitimacy of a wrestler, I think to myself, well, what would have happened if, they got in the ring with Bruiser Brody? Like I put like Miz. How long would Miz last with a Bruiser Brody before, or a Orange Cassidy or somebody like that? And I have to put this guy in the same category. Not that, he is very, very good at what he does. Don't get me wrong. As far as, the gymnastics and the acrobatics, he's probably the best there is, or one of the best there is. But, I am not of the generation that, give me Bull Curry and Johnny Valentine. Give me Flair Steamboat. Give me Wahoo McDaniel and Ric Flair. 2 out of 3 falls. That's wrestling. This guy. Ricochet. And by the way, Ricochet, happy 35th birthday in 2 more days. We don't want to slight you there, but yeah, he's in the current generation of the current product of wrestling, he's serviceable. In my definition of wrestling, absolutely not.
I totally understand that. I get it. So let's see, where were we? So we're going, how about on October the 12th in 1982?
All right. And one more time, Memphis, Tennessee. Here we go again. So I think my prediction is going to be accurate. I bet you there's not going to be a week that goes by that we're not going to have something that is Memphis related. But on this date, October 11th, 1982, which would have been my second wedding anniversary, I probably still wasn't able to live that down with the Bushwhackers. Although that happened in the future, so I guess I could. But so on this date, Nick Bockwinkel defeated Jerry Lawler to win the AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship. Now, we just talked about Nick Bockwinkel defeating Otto Wanz to regain the AWA World Heavyweight Championship on October the 9th. This is only 2 days later. So 2 days later, he traveled to Memphis and he beat Lawler for that championship. And there was back in the territory days, there were some very prestigious titles, like the Intercontinental Championship when it first came out in '79 was, for WWF, it was definitely the number 2 title. The Missouri Heavyweight Championship was one of the elite territory titles, but the Southern Heavyweight Championship was also one of those. So, and we talked about Ken Patera last week. He won the Intercontinental Championship. He beat Pat Patterson. 4 days later, he beat David Von Erich for the NWA Missouri Championship. So, it's a pretty hard thing to do. And in my mind, Bockwinkel, I mean, they talk about the all-time greats. You always hear about Flair. You hear about Briscoe. You hear about Hogan. You don't really get Nick Bockwinkel in that discussion. And I think that's a shame because I think the guy was a complete package. I mean, I don't know how much, the people who are listening, listen to a Bockwinkel promo or two. Actually, listen to one with Bobby Heenan because those guys were so good together. But, watch some of his work, watch some of his matches actually with Hogan. He hung with Hogan and he actually made Hogan look good. And, what happened was he was actually offered the NWA World title, I believe in the late 70s or early 80s, but he turned it down. And the reason why he turned it down is because he could wrestle for Vern Gagne in the AWA and do like maybe 150 to 175 dates a year and make the same money as he would in the NWA wrestling like 100 more dates. So a no-brainer, stayed in the AWA, made good money, and to me, one of the greatest champions ever.
I unfortunately didn't get to see much of him. My exposure to him was in his later years, and the feud that I remember him in is the one with Kurt Hennig, with the roll of dimes. When Hennig
that's after he had turned babyface. I mean, the guy was a heel for years. Great. Before that, was a great tag team champion with Larry Hennig. Not Larry Hennig, I'm sorry, Ray Stevens. And just one of the best ever. He always would use, these $100 words in his promos, and rumor or legend has it that he would actually just look in a dictionary like the day before his promo and just look up a couple of like really eloquent words that he probably had never heard of before. And he'd slip them into his promo and it worked. I mean, he sounded very cerebral.
Jimmy, I gotta take a dump. What? No, I mean I need a dumpster.
Well, for all those needs, you need to call Big V Dumpster Rental, Long Island, New York, 631-900-DUMP. Elm Logistics, for all your logistic needs, call 631-299-3595. That's 631-299-3595. Elm Global Logistics, pride, performance, and partnerships.
Yeah. So on October 11th, 1999, Raw gets a 6.1 rating and defeats WCW Monday Nitro with a 2.6 rating. Look at that number, 6.1. That's, I bet they'd love to do that now.
I think, well, and with these ratings, if something's on at the same time, you got to wonder how much duplication was there. So for me, like I was guilty of flipping back and forth. I think a lot of people were back in the day.
I think
if you had a crap.
But by this point, absolutely. But by this point, this was in the, wasn't this in like the Russo Run era where it was really starting to stink up?
This is when it sucked. I mean, this is really after the NWO had their run. But I mean, that number is mind boggling. It's something to think about. The 6.1, I believe, would equate to about I could be wrong, but I'm going to be close. 8 million viewers.
Wow.
To think that on a Monday night, 8 million people were watching wrestling, and what's the count now? Maybe 2 million.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking at some of the matches from the night. So some of the matches you had Ivory versus Mae Young for the women's championship. Oh, let's see.
That night?
Yeah, that night.
So how old was Mae Young? Like about 107 that
right? Oh, let's see. They had Billy Gunn with the Road Dogg against Crash Holly with Hardcore Holly. Edge and Christian versus the Brood, Matt and Jeff Hardy. X-Pac versus Farouk. Godfather with the Hose versus Mark Henry. Big Show versus the Big Boss Man. So yeah, pretty much the who's who of wrestling at that point.
It's funny. Some of those names you mentioned, that's going to be 24 years ago in 2 more days.
Yeah.
And you got Edge and Christian, you got Billy Gunn. These guys are still wrestling.
Yeah, yeah. I know some people are looking forward to Edge in the AEW. I'm really not, Adam Copeland. I'm not. I really don't want to see the geriatric match where they bring back the Dudleys and they have like a wheelchair nap and diaper match or something like that, because they're not going to they're not going to relive those matches from the early 2000s.
Well, I mean, what do you think is going to happen with Adam Copeland in AEW?
Well, so far, not much has happened. That needle didn't move on the ratings. But hey, that's a whole other story. I don't know. I hope he's there. He helps develop some of the younger talent. I've never been a big fan of his, but his early days as a tag team wrestler, I did enjoy him. But once he broke into the singles ranks, I really wasn't a big fan of him. I don't know. He says this is a new beginning for him, and we'll see what happens.
And again, the Bruiser Brody test, there's no way that guy steps in the ring with a Bruiser Brody. I mean, he's not out of shape by any means, and he's not skinny, but he's not what you had back in the day.
Yeah. Yep. So on same date in 1945 in Austin, Texas, the legend, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes was born. Where do you start with him? Is it Dustin Runnels? Virgil Dustin Runnels? Where do you start? He was the man in the 70s, the man in the 80s. He was in the right place at the right time. He had that charisma. He had that voice. He had that jive. Everybody loved that dude. It didn't matter, black, white, indifferent. Everybody loved Dusty. They gave him a horrible gimmick as the plumber when he got to the WWF in the late 80s. Guess what? He got that over.
Right. The polka dots.
Yeah, the yellow polka dots. Oh, man, Dusty Rhodes, what a legend. And then, somebody continued to give back even in his later days, helping to develop other people and their promos.
And when you think about it, I mean, you go back to the early 80s and you see like the people, like you had Terry Funk, you had Ric Flair, you had Briscoe, you had Harley Race. Now, none of them were bodybuilders, but they were like in pretty decent shape. And then you have Dusty Rhodes, who I don't think he ever saw the inside of a gym a day in his life. And the fact that somebody who looked like that, not that he couldn't go in the ring, his work was good, but I mean, like you said, the guy was absolute magic on the mic, and he had the people in the palm of his hand.
No, absolutely. Let's see. So let's move on to the 12th. Well, let's see, actually, let's check some time here. No, we're good on time. Okay. Let's move on to October 12th, 1983 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Very sad day. Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard of Wrestling, died at the age of 57. It's really funny when it happened. I was 28, and I'm thinking like, well, he was old enough. But now that I think, like now I'm 68, I think, damn, he was young. But I mean, such a legendary and wonderful character in the history of professional wrestling. So he first appeared in professional wrestling as Abdullah Farouk. He was the manager of the original Sheik in the Sheik's big time wrestling territory, which is based out of Detroit. And he came to the then WWF in 1971. I think he managed beautiful Bobby Harmon, I think was his his first protege. And in 1973, he led Stan Stasiak to the WWF Championship over Pedro Morales. And then in 1977, he was in the corner of superstar Billy Graham when Graham defeated then champion Bruno Sammartino in Baltimore, Maryland. And he also managed Pat Patterson during his first intercontinental title run. And besides that, he managed Killer Kowalski, Ernie Ladd, Ox Baker, Sergeant Slaughter, the Masked Superstar, and like the list went on and on. Just, the guy was a legend. He was so good at what he did. And it just reminds me of something that, I always talk about things that were part of wrestling's past that are not part of wrestling's present. One of them would be the draw. When was the last time you saw a draw? I haven't seen a draw like in 20 years. But, one of the things is the use of the managers. I mean, back in the day, in the 80s and 70s, you had Albano, Blassie, and the Grand Wizard. Then you had, You had Bobby Heenan, Mr.
Jimmy
Fuji,
Hart.
you had Jimmy Hart.
Yeah.
You had
Slick,
you had Downtown Bruno, you had Humperdinck. I mean, you had Sherry.
Paul Bearer.
You had so many managers. Even Miss Elizabeth. I mean, every heel pretty much was attached to a manager. And now you got Paul Heyman. And that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and a couple of women, the valets there, but that's about it.
Yeah, a Dakota Kai, she must know somebody because, I don't know what she's still doing, collecting a paycheck.
Well, from what I understand, she's injured right now, but they want to keep they want to keep her relevant on TV.
All right.
So
I saw her on Saturday night. She was quite irrelevant, but okay.
So, hey, listen, it's about that time. We got to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about Bret Hart and Ric Flair. So,
all right. We'll be right back.
All right.
Sir,
Ah.
Manscaped.
Uh-huh.
Have you tried the new equipment that's been sent?
I'm afraid because it says weed whacker. I'm scared.
Maven, Manscaped. What are you thinking about
Love it.
Manscaped, dude?
Love it.
What do you use it for?
Necessity. What don't I use it for? Put it this way. The only hair I have on my entire body is these eyebrows.
Yeah.
That you see. These
Wow.
caterpillars racing to the middle of my nose. That's it.
That is it.
That's all I have. And that's all I want.
That's the
So
big-
Manscaped is a
You-
must.
We were talking before the show. There's nothing worse than just hair.
Yeah.
Right? Hair on a woman, hair on a man. It's just bad.
Absolutely. And it's the one thing that the older I get, it starts growing more in unwanted areas.
Absolutely.
I hate it.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Just going to go out there.
Oh, boy.
Go for it.
You're doing a deed.
Yes.
Again, I don't want you to have to admit this because as men, we try not to admit this. But if you're going to
Oh,
go
I
do
know
the deed
where-
on a
I
woman,
know where
would you
he's
rather
going.
have her be hairless or a little hair, racing stripe, or
Racing stripe.
full retro bush?
Well,
Racing stripe.
Retro Bush is out.
Yes, thank you.
Retro Bush is out.
Yeah.
I don't mind a small, well manicured landing strip. Every now and then, if it's completely, and I'm talking like baby's ass bald, then I start. Where is that pedophilia line? I don't want to
Wow.
wander into that.
That's
thought
very
of it like
interesting.
that.
I never thought about that. You're a
Wow.
smart dude. Holy shit.
So if the landing strip is clean enough for the plane to go in smoothly, you're cool with that.
If the landing strip has like I said, well manicured,
Yeah,
you can see both sides. It's not
Like blinking lights on both sides of that
I
landing?
just don't. I don't want. I don't want the shrubbery going off into unwanted areas on that as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh, look
but-
what you found. Ooh.
I got to be all honest though. Hey, the older I get though, I don't think I can be as
I found it! I found
have
it!
you ever gone down there and she slowly brings down the underwear? Then
What is
retro? Just,
Absolutely.
You're like, whoa!
Wow,
Yeah,
like,
I'm
like
46,
it
of
pops
course.
out?
Do you like walk out or what do you do?
No, I muster through. I muster up the courage to get
He's
through.
a trooper. He's a trooper. Gotta give him an A.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah,
There you go.
I hear you.
There you
Listen,
go.
I couldn't
Super
say.
Bush.
I couldn't say. Well, if you have the same beliefs as Maven does, Manscaped could help you.
Absolutely.
The weed whacker.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I may have to, go in a room, close the door, and hang out with the weed whacker for a little while.
Yeah, I think you're a retro guy, aren't you?
I like 70s adult films, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
but
only
with that,
Ron
we're going to take a
Jeremy,
quick
Batman.
commercial break and we'll be
Anyway.
back with this wrestling icon, Maven.
We will see you in a drop kick second.
Drop kick.
Again, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends.
Hey, Benny. Awesome. So, like I said, we were going to get into Ric Flair and Bret Hart. So, on October 12th, 1992, at Saskatoon, whatever.
Saskatchewan.
Okay, Saskatchewan there. Wow, I don't want to try to say
Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Say that 10 times fast, right?
Yeah, right. So, Bret Hart defeats Ric Flair to win his first WWF World Heavyweight Championship at a house show.
Yeah, that was something.
Show. So did you know the story behind it? I actually didn't until I started doing some research there.
No, I just from my own personal memory that, I think I was going to watch that night. For whatever reason, I was running a little bit late. And when I turned it on, Bret had a belt. I thought, oh, he got back the IC title. And then when I had to do something else, the next thing I know, he's being interviewed and he won the world championship. Like, what the hell happened? No, I don't know the backstory though. So if you have, that's great.
Yeah. So it took me a little bit of digging, but in an interview, Ric Flair said that on the previous evening, he ended up getting dropped on his head and cracked a piece of his ear canal. And so his equilibrium was really, really off. And if you actually got to see that match, it was probably the worst Ric Flair Bret Hart match that could have happened because Ric Flair couldn't keep his balance. At one point, he ended up taking a backbreaker and he couldn't get back up for a minute and had to lay on the mat. From there, Ric Flair ended up having to take 6 months off to recover from this. And then he came back, and then soon after that ended up leaving the WWF. But I was surprised. The Ultimate Warrior, he was a little bit of known for those botches, but I guess he had dropped him on his head, and that's how we ended up with Bret Hart with his first championship.
Oh, so it was the Warrior then?
The Warrior.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, he was kind of rough.
So the Warrior is the reason Bret Hart owes the Warrior a debt of gratitude for his first world title there.
Wow. Yeah, did not know that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised, yeah. But so let's move on to October 13th, 1975. I was a brand new newborn at that point.
Really? So was I. I was 20. So on that date at Madison Square Garden, Bruno Sammartino and Ivan Koloff ended, and we just talked about, I just said that you don't really see draws anymore. So they ended in a draw when the referee ruled that both men were bleeding too heavily to continue. And I'm just in utter amazement how this worked. I mean, WWF for years and years and years, they cycled in these heels from these other territories. What they do is they put them on TV, they squash a couple of guys, and then eventually they defeated Dominic DeNucci, who was, for a while the number 2 babyface, or they would attack Arnold Skolin, who was Bruno's manager, and that would set up a match at the Garden. And if they went over well enough, they would extend it to 2 or 3 matches. Just and this worked for years. And I'm not sure if it was Bruno. I'm sure Bruno had everything to do with it, but it was also McMahon as well. The guy was a promotional genius. And now Koloff, actually, people think he came right in and beat Bruno. He was in the WWF in 1969. He lost many matches to Bruno. Came back in 1970, and then on January 18th, 1971, did the unspeakable and ended the 7-year, 8-month reign of the living legend. And I want to let that sink in. 7 years and 8 months. And, everybody, the today's wrestling fans, they're going gaga that Roman Reigns' title reign is over 1,100 days. He's about a third of the way to Bruno's first reign. Roman Reigns, I don't think, has even exceeded or even half of Bruno's second reign. And now the other thing to note is that Roman hasn't defended his title in over 3 months. And I believe if you look in 3 years, has less than 40 title defenses. Bruno routinely defended his title at least 200 times a year. And, on a side note, I think it's really a damn shame that Ivan Koloff is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, to me, that was the most significant victory in the history of professional wrestling. And the guy who won that match is not in the Hall of Fame. That's sad.
You know, and that's back in the day when they told real stories of the ring for an hour straight. They told story. Yes, there were a lot of rest holds, but you know, they told the stories with their faces, with their actions, the smallest move meant something. It didn't have to be a big flip off the top rope finisher that somebody's going to kick out of. They sold it as it went along. I mean, those were the the real legends of the.
And a finisher was a finisher. Nobody was going to break Bruno's backbreaker. Nobody was getting out of Billy Graham's bear hug. I mean, nobody was getting out of Ken Patera swinging full Nelson. It just, that was now, these guys get power bombed through 19 flaming tables, and 5 seconds later they're making a comeback.
So true. It's sad. It's sad. These guys are putting their bodies on the line more than they need to. Probably shortening a lot of their careers more than they need to. But that's today's product.
Yep.
So let's move on to the 13th of October in 1990 in Toledo, Ohio. WWF airs the 28th Saturday night's main event, which earns a 7 broadcast rating. Yeah. At 11:30 at night, it earns a 7.
And I think that would equate to close to probably 9 or 10 million people. That's just amazing.
So here, check out the card this night, because it's actually not known for being the best of cards at that time. So let's see. We have the Ultimate Warrior and a Legion of Doom defeating Axe Smash and Crush. You had Randy Savage with Queen Sherry defeating Dusty Rhodes by countout. Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Wrestler Tugboat defeats Rhythm and Blues, Honky Tonk Man, and Greg Valentine. Sergeant Slaughter defeated Coco Beware. And then the Texas Tornado defeated Haku with Bobby Heenan in his corner.
Wow. Did they ever call him Kerry Von Erich, or did they always call him the Texas Tornado?
I don't know. I
don't remember.
I want to say when he first came in, he was the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, but soon they just dropped the Kerry Von Erich.
It was like the Widowmaker and the Stalker with Barry Windham, which was really a shame because, everybody knew it was Barry Windham. Come on.
No, Barry was a talented. The WWF, when he was younger, they did him right with the tag team run, but then he should have definitely had a main event run in WWF. He definitely had that ability. So we talked a little bit about this last week, but in the Marine made its debut on this day in 2006. It ranked 6th in earnings for that Friday. Overall, the film grosses $22 million. $22 million bucks.
Yeah, it is what it is. I still have seen none of the Marines. I don't anticipate ever seeing any of the Marines, but yeah, I guess at $22 million, it probably made him a few bucks, and it didn't hurt the career of John Cena.
No. So let's move on because we got. I know neither one of us has much to say on that one.
Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
On October 14th, 1989, in Providence, Rhode Island, Tito Santana wins the King of the Ring tournament. There's somebody who just never could break above that mid-card level. He had everything. He had the voice, he had the talk, he had the look. Just couldn't get out of that upper mid-card level. And at this point, I think it was where he became the Matador soon after and took a couple of steps backwards down the card.
Right. I for years thought that, I felt bad for Tito because I thought he should have been given at least even a token run, even as a transitional WWF champion. But then I think about the guy, I think he was in the WWF 15 years, and he had nice runs as the IC champion. When he came in, I think in 79, they put the tag team belts on him with Ivan Putski. So, the guy probably made a crap ton of money because he came in right at the right time. He was with the WWF right when they became national and international. So I'm sure he's not hurting for money. And so I don't really feel bad for him. I like Tito Santana a lot. I think he was very talented. And I think where he, what he did was pretty commensurate with his skill. If he could not have been a long-running WWF champion by any means. I don't think he had the charisma he was over, but he wasn't like that over. if that makes sense.
Yep. Oh, absolutely agree. I mean, he had that almost there. Yeah, yeah. He had his from WrestleMania 1, and then he was on the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. He had his action figures. Yeah, Strike Force was a great tag team. I mean, he was almost there, just not. Maybe a couple of years later he could have done it, or a couple of years earlier, just didn't. Wrong time for him. That Hulk Hogan era is kind of like the Michael Jordan era in basketball. There were some great players that never got a championship just because of that man. So
right, but I mean, what's that thing? Don't cry for me, Argentina. Don't cry for me, Tito Santana. Because the guy had a great career.
Yeah, and from what I understand, he's actually a really nice guy. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him, but I know he's been on with Mike and Jimmy, and a couple of my other friends have met him, and everybody says he's a really, really good guy.
I have never heard a bad word about Tito Santana. Everything I've heard is he's just a great guy.
So October 14th, 1995 in Syracuse, New York. What happens then? This is an infamous
Not one of Shawn Michaels' better moments. He got assaulted outside a nightclub in Syracuse, New York. And I think this is one of these stories. This is like Robert Stack, Unsolved Mysteries. We're never really going to know the truth. Apparently, the one thing we do know is that Michaels flirted with the girlfriend of a 23-year-old Marine at a bar. And I wasn't there, but I'd be willing to bet that the hefty salary that I get paid for this show, that he was just the obnoxious, entitled little prick that he often was back then. And there's many different accounts of what happened, as far as how many Marines removed him out of his rental car and beat the ever-loving shit out of him. I believe the police report said 9 or 10. But interestingly enough, and if he comes back on Monty and Pharaoh, this is the one thing I want to ask Marty Jannetty. Marty Jannetty said it was just the one guy. And I'm likely to believe Marty this time. So it's between 1 and 10. And the funny thing was that Bill Watts at that time was one of the bookers in WWF. And I can tell you that if this happened in Mid-South, that Michael's little boy toy ass would have been immediately fired. and now, of course, WWF made it into a huge storyline and stripped Michaels of the title. Shawn Michaels, he never lost the title. He always got stripped of a title, or he lost his smile or whatever he lost. But they gave it to Shane Douglas, but who immediately handed back to the fellow Click member, Razor Ramon.
Yeah, well, we will never know the truth behind that night. That's going to be one of those infamous stories that by the time 2075 rolls around, it's going to be 100 Marines and the National Guard. It took them all to take down Shawn Michaels or something.
I think it's been like was it like the Zapruder tapes? It's been sealed for 75 years. I'll be about 111, and I'll get to find out what happened.
So, on the October 14th, 2009, Westchester City, New York, our good old friend Captain Lou Albano passes away at the age of 75.
Wow. I mean, what can you say? I mean, we can take 3 shows just talking about Lou Albano, and I can tell you that when I became a fan in 1968, he was still a wrestler, albeit not very good. And although for a time he and Tony Altomar were known as the Sicilians, and they were Midwest tag team champions for a bit. And although I guess they got approached by some legitimate wise guys and said, I think you need to knock off that gimmick. And then guess what? They knocked off the gimmick. But, Bruno approached Albano one day, and I don't know if you ever saw the movie Caddyshack. Well, who hasn't seen Caddyshack? But, the thing when Ty Webb approaches Al Sherbeck, Rodney Dangerfield, he goes, "You're not good. You stink." He pretty much told Lou that in nice words, but he did tell Lou that he thought he was a great talker and that Bruno would speak to Vince Sr. about making him a manager. And, of course, the rest is history. And besides being one of I think Lou Albano would be on any Mount Rushmore of the greatest manager. But the guy did more than that. He literally transcended pop culture into pop culture. I mean, he was in movies. He was on TV shows. He was in Cyndi Lauper videos. Yeah. And I mean, I think, in my opinion, Albano was very instrumental in ushering in the rock and wrestling connection. And I don't think he really gets the credit that he deserves in assisting WWF into becoming an international phenomenon.
Isn't it the legend? It was him sitting next to Cyndi Lauper that launched it all on a plane.
Yeah.
So
And then I could see the two of them hitting it off. I mean, I guarantee you, like they, Cyndi Lauper absolutely had to love Lou Albano, and vice versa. But yeah, I mean, that whole angle, and it eventually resulted in Albano turning babyface for the first time, and but I think that helped get the whole thing over, and it pushed WWF into the national limelight.
So my experiences with Lou Albano, wrestling wise, he was already a face by the time I was watching wrestling, and he actually lived in my area. So he across the river from Poughkeepsie is Highland, and it's just there's the Mid Hudson Bridge runs in between them, and he lived in Highland, New York, when I was a kid, and you'd actually run into him at the grocery store or McDonald's and stuff, and he was actually a really, really nice man. He was always generous to us kids, like, taking pictures and stuff like that. I wish I could I'm sure I've got pictures with him somewhere. Yeah, I'd love to find them. They're probably in some storage unit somewhere, one of my father's units. But man, he definitely, he definitely was the first wrestler I ever met. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, Lou Albano.
Yeah, it just, to me, the epitome of old school wrestling is Lou Albano.
On October 15th, 2011, in Mexico City, Mexico, John Cena teamed with Jim Ross against Michael Cole and the WWE World Champion Alberto Del Rio. And this was the main event. Not exactly. What is the background on this one?
I don't know, and if I never find out, I don't think I'm going to be the worst for it. But I mean, I will never be a Michael Cole fan, and heel Michael Cole in a ring is like not something I would pay a plug nickel to see. Now I will say that, and this is just my opinion, I really liked Alberto Del Rio. I thought he was in the ring. The guy was superb, and I don't think his promos, his heel promos. Now when they made him a babyface, that was awful. He definitely did not connect as a babyface, but I thought he was a pretty decent heel, and I had no issue with him being the champion. But yeah, Michael Cole, I mean, I still turn down the volume when I hear Michael Cole.
Well, this was, let's see, Jim Ross. When did he end up leaving WWE? That was sometime not too long after this, was it?
I mean, how many times did he leave?
That's true. That's true.
He's like Billy Martin with the Yankees.
Billy's back. Billy's back.
Yeah, Billy's back. Oh, Billy's gone again. You missed it. But if you wait, I'll be back.
Oh yeah, I used to go to opening day at Yankee Stadium when I was a kid every year, and I remember that the parachutes coming in, the banners. Billy's back. Billy's back. Oh well. But,
you want to know? Just my humble opinion, but if Billy Martin had managed the Yankees this year, they would have made the playoffs.
Yeah. So let's see. What do we've got?
And he would have gotten fired.
Exactly. Well, if Steinbrenner were here.
Right. Exactly.
So on October 15th, 1973, in New York, New York, WWF champion Pedro Morales defeats Stan Hansen in a Texas death match.
Actually, Stan Stasiak, but I think he probably did defeat Stan Hansen as well. But ironically though, Pedro would lose his title to the bad man from Buzzard Creek, Oregon, in Philadelphia, just 47 days later. And I don't know about you, I always thought Buzzard Creek was a real place, but I've since learned that it's actually a kayfabe place. I think it's 48 miles north by northwest of Parts Unknown. And sadly, for Stasiak's sake, he would drop the title to Bruno at Madison Square Garden 9 days later. So he was, again, like Koloff was I think Koloff lasted 21 days. Stasiak lasted 9 days. But somehow in those 9 days, he must have had at least 10,000 pictures taken. Because every time I look on Facebook, there's a new picture of Stan Stasiak with the belt that I haven't seen. So he was busy. He probably didn't wrestle in those 9 days. He just took pictures. And now, unlike Koloff, thankfully Stasiak was inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame, albeit posthumously in 2018. And that's something I want to take a second to talk about, because Dominic DeNucci, who passed away a couple of years ago, I mean, there's another man that, people talk about Dominic DeNucci. Oh, he was just a jobber. And Baron Cicluni, he was just a jobber. Those guys. What happened was that they made the decision I call it homesteading, and they did not want to travel. Both those guys live in Pittsburgh, and they wanted to stay close to home. So the last couple of years of their career, they put people over, which they should have done. I mean, they were in their 50s. But I mean, Dominic DeNucci was he was the IWA, the Australian version of the world heavyweight champion, I think 4 different times, and he beat, I believe, Killer Kowalski, Ray Stevens, King Curtis Ayukea, and Toru Tanaka. Now, those are like, top 10 in the world wrestling. Dominic DeNucci was the real deal. He won titles everywhere he went, and he even won, I think, 3 different tag team titles in the WWF. But I mean, even when he got there, he was at the end of his career. But I mean, if they inducted a Bullet Bob Armstrong into the WWE Hall of Fame based on his body of work, it's just a damn shame somebody like a DeNucci or an Ivan Koloff, I mean, or even Stasiak, they should have been alive for these inductions. It's the posthumous. It's good for their family, but they deserve to be inducted while they're alive and well.
Absolutely.
Just my opinion.
It keeps their name alive, but yeah, it would have been nice if it was during their lifetime. But, well, we got to take another quick break. You want to send us out?
We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
M&J Video Games and Collectibles. Sport and non-sport cards, wrestling items, autographed items. We buy, sell, and trade. M&J Video Games and Collectibles, located at 1049 Queen Street, Southington, Connecticut. Call us at 1-860-479-9223 or 860-93-GAMES. M&J Video Games and Collectibles.
Do you treat your dog as part of the family? Well, so do we. So why not celebrate your pup's birthday with the ultimate party box? Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Party Pup Info, and let us make your pup's party or any celebration perfection.
Guess what? We're back.
Hey, Benny, good to be back. So let's start. We're getting towards the end of this. We're on the last day of the week. We're on October 16th, 1989. We're in Providence, Rhode Island. Another King of the Ring tournament result. This one is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Oh, this was, 1988. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, wins the King of the Ring tournament with a victory over Randy Savage. So this is before the King of the Ring was as prevalent, but soon after it becomes a real go-to event of the year. Let's see. This would have been right before Ted DiBiase introduced the $1 Million belt.
Right.
Because
now, here's a guy who I think, another guy that I could have easily seen Ted DiBiase as the WWF champion, and it would not have been a stretch by any means. And I think he could have carried it quite a bit, just as, back in maybe the late 70s, and when Harley Race and Dusty and Flair were swapping the NWA belt, I could have seen DiBiase in that mix as well. I could have easily seen him as an NWA champion because he could work NWA style, and then he could also work WWF style. He was very, very talented guy, and I mean, geez, his mic work was, especially as the $1 Million Man, was off the charts. I could have seen him as a champion easily.
I laughed when I watched the older matches, and I saw Hulk Hogan's debut match in WWF was against Ted DiBiase, and then 10 years later, Ted DiBiase is the $1 Million Man. So it's kind of funny how that came about.
Right. No, again, I think he is one of the all-time greats. I really, I always enjoyed watching him. His in-ring work was superb. I mean, he's one of those guys that I think if you want to teach an up-and-coming young wrestler about psychology, I think you have him watch a Ted DiBiase match.
Absolutely. So let's move on to 2000 in Detroit, Michigan. William Regal defeats Al Snow to win, I believe, his first WWF European Championship. This was when he had come back from WCW. He had that early stint, and then he left for WCW, and then came back, and this is when he really was that the obnoxious the obnoxious heel character that he ends up endearing everybody with.
Yeah, the funny thing is, and I always got a kick out of the Canadian Football League had a team in Baltimore. How does that happen? It's the Canadian Football League, and you have a team in Baltimore. And like in this case, he wins the European Championship in Detroit. I mean, I'm not the best. I'm pretty good in math. I'm like mediocre in geography, but I don't think Detroit somehow migrated to Europe. So I never could get that. But William Regal, man, that guy was a real deal. And one of my favorite matches is when he actually tried to make a match out of it with Goldberg, which ultimately wound up in him getting fired. But I got to tell you, I think if that was a shoot, I would have put my money on Regal.
Yeah, well, Goldberg has the muscles. Regal is actually a grappler.
Yeah. William Regal was like the second generation Billy Robinson, who, was like the ultimate shooter. Guys like him, Carl Gotch, and Regal was a later iteration of those guys where like they knew what they were doing and they could take care of themselves in the ring.
So let's fast forward to our last topic on the day. This was October 16th in 2004 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The legend
Stu Hart, the legend, passes away at the age of 88. And now, besides Terry Funk, Stu Hart is the most imitated man in the history of professional wrestling. Hey, Bruce, how you doing there?
So you think over the Macho Man?
Yeah, I think everybody has a Stu Hart impersonation. I mean, people have good Stu Hart impersonations. I mean, a lot of people have crappy Macho Man. Stu Hart, often imitated, never duplicated. But, obviously the career of his son, Brett, and the tragic death of his youngest son, Owen, have kind of like obscured his legacy. But make no mistake about it, this guy is a bona fide wrestling legend. I mean, he was a great professional wrestler in his own right. And then he creates Stampede Wrestling based out of Calgary. And besides being a great promoter, I think his real claim to fame was being the trainer that he was. And many wrestlers told a story or two about the sheer brutality of working with Stu in the dungeon. And just a small list of people that he trained. Besides his own sons were Fritz von Erich, Superstar Billy Graham, Chris Jericho, Edge, Christian, I think Benoit, and, again, in addition to all his sons. And, few men have contributed more to professional wrestling than Stu Hart has.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think the WWE, especially in that, or WWF, especially in that mid-'80s run, could have done what it did without having those wrestlers coming out of the dungeon? Right.
I mean, you think of all the guys another one that made his, made his bones. There was Bad News Brown.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Bad News Brown was actually Bad News Allen.
Yeah, I remember.
in Stampede Wrestling. He and Bret Hart, I believe, would they had epic battles, and they swapped the Calgary promotion. Their belt was the North American Championship, and Brown won it numerous times. Comes to the WWF, another one that they made into a cartoon character. I mean, they didn't. I don't think they ever said that he won a bronze medal in judo in the Olympics. I don't think they ever mentioned that. They just they made him up that he was from the ghetto, which I believe he actually was. But the guy was an immensely talented guy. And yeah, he came out of Calgary as well. So many great wrestlers came out of Calgary.
Yeah, that Stampede was legendary.
Oh yeah.
And
then Vince bought it from Stu, and I think he reneged. He promised him some money. And I think he welched on it, and
never paid him.
But yeah.
So, wow, Benny, we're about that time. It's been fun. I can't believe it's been another hour.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing that excites me the most about doing this show, is besides the lucrative salary that you guys are paying me, did
you ever think we would make
shirts?
This? Yeah. Did you ever think we'd make this much? It's crazy.
No. I mean, there's a big crowd outside my door that I have to address once we end this podcast. But I don't think we'll ever run out of good material. I mean, literally, again, I think there were 22 items on the list this week. I believe there were 24 last week, and there could have easily been 100. And I have the feeling that for every 7-week period we look at, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to have to cull out maybe the best 20 to 25 events. But I mean, people are maybe going to be listening and say, well, you missed this. Well, yeah, we probably did. And we're probably always going to miss something because, we only have an hour and we try to cover as much as we can, which I think we did a pretty good job covering 22 significant dates in history. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be something to talk about here.
So let's see. So next thing we got to promote is we've got Dan and Benny in the ring. That's good.
Yeah, like I said, tomorrow night we have a great show lined up.
It'll be in the past now. Don't forget we're airing Wednesday. So it'll be you're airing tomorrow. Or you?
Yes, yeah. We're going to be. You'll be able to listen to us on Podbean at about 8:00, 8:30. And like I said, it's going to be Bruno Lauer, who, and if you're familiar with Memphis, you're going to remember as Downtown Bruno. If you're more of a WWE fan, you're going to remember as Harvey Whippleman. Or if you really go back into the old days, I think his name was Dr. Leonard Spazinski, was his previous gimmick. But just a great guy, full of stories, and it's going to be a very interesting show.
And then, of course, come Thursday, we got to go chase that title, get it back from Phil.
With Senior Guns, look out. We're coming after you.
So, and then, of course, Monty and the Pharaoh will be on later that night at 9 p.m. And I'm not sure. They do have a guest this week. I'm not sure who it is. And then we'll be back next week.
Well, and one more thing, too. I mean, I guess I'm going to put myself out on a limb here. Brittany Brown was a great guest on Dan and Benny in the Ring. She was a very, very competent wrestler who, again, now that's somebody who could have been a force to be reckoned with in either the WCW or the WWF. But she chose, again, she had a very good job, or it still has a job in Boston in the insurance business. And rather than give that up, she wanted to, keep her stability. So she stayed close to home and she wrestled, probably 20 years in the area. But she's going to be my co-host. We're going to both be co-hosts. It's going to be True Crime with the Bad Girl and the Player. So we're going to take a look at famous murder cases and just dissect them, give our own takes on them. And at the end, we're going to give our own take on whether or not did the guy really do it, or did the lady should just make guy, whoever the murderer was, did they really do it or not? So I believe our first episode will be about Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler, which is a very, very controversial case. So hopefully we're going to have that ready for you in the next couple of weeks.
I can't wait, Betty. Sounds like fun. It's great. We got all this new content coming out. So
yeah, keep me busy,
So you want to take us on out of here?
Yeah. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode of This Week in Pro Wrestling History. And you folks have a great week. Don't forget to tune in on Thursday night.
Later.